Who likes feeling disappointed? I know I despise it. Well, we're going to talk about what to do with disappointment. As God gave us this emotion of disappointment, and he gave it to us for our good, but we can abuse this emotion. We can sit in it, and we can demand more from it than it's actually capable of giving to us. So let's talk about processing disappointment so we can glean all the good things that it can provide for us without sitting in it indulgently. Okay. So we got a 3-step process here. The first thing I like to do is identify what is the failed expectation that we did not meet. Disappointment literally means failure to arrive at an appointment. We failed to meet an expectation. So we had an idea in our mind of what right looked like, what success looked like, and we fell short, or it's not conformed to that image of success that we have in our mind. Let's define what that image of success is. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is this a realistic image of success? Say, for example, you demand something of yourself that you don't have the expertise to really deliver on, or you demand something of yourself that you don't have the time or the energy to really fulfill, or you put a demand on somebody else that they don't have the time or the energy to fulfill. This is setting ourselves up for disappointment. And so if we can identify realistic expectations, it's a way for avoiding disappointment. But sometimes when we feel disappointment, it may just be revealing to ourselves that we have an expectation that's a little bit too high. It's lacking in humility. Okay, so that's step number 2. Step number 3 is to do something called accept and then adjust. Okay, so if we fell short of arriving at our expectation of success and we're feeling disappointed, we can't change that we didn't arrive there in that moment, in the timeline that we had expected. So we just need to accept that reality. But then I would say adjust your expectation. Now, you may think that I'm saying to lower the bar at this point, but what I'm really inviting us to do is to move out of the disappointment. Disappointment has done its job. It's identified that there is an expectation that we have failed to meet. That's all disappointment is good for. But now we're adjusting and we're looking at the same situation and we're gleaning some growth from it. Yeah, I didn't meet that expectation, but this is what I learned. This is what I gained in the process. I think an example where Aaron and I, we put a podcast on with Leah Dower, our first podcast, and we had this expectation of having a great podcast with a great Catholic mind, and it was going to be a big hit, and we couldn't wait and to build this relationship with Leah as well. What happened was we ended up creating a podcast, and the audio was so terrible that we couldn't even use it. We had set up our audio incorrectly. So we felt very disappointed. In fact, we made a whole podcast on this experience. You can check it out in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. And so, but finally, when we came to that place of acceptance, and it was very humbling to do this, we were able to reach out and say, okay, we learned from this. How can we adjust our expectations? Okay, we learned how to fix our audio problems. But then we were able to kind of swallow our pride here as well and reach out to Leah and invite her to do another podcast. And she was very gracious, and we did another podcast, and I would say it was even better than the first one that we couldn't use. But we didn't get there by sitting in the disappointment. Disappointment is not a motivating emotion. All it is calling our attention to the fact that there's a failed expectation, and that's it. Okay. But we sit in disappointment only to get that knowledge, and then we move from it. And we move from it from that process. First, identifying that failed expectation. Second, is it a realistic expectation, or is there an opportunity to grow in humility here? And then the third is acceptance and adjustment, right? Accept the fact that we missed the appointment, missed the expectation, and what can we learn from this experience? Okay? Hope this has been helpful to get you out of indulging in disappointment, because indulging is just when we're expecting that emotion to do much more than it's capable of doing. All it is reveal a failed expectation. If you want to learn how to process disappointment, check us out in the Metanoia Catholic Academy. Blessings.